Okay. So welcome, everyone. I'm very, very excited to welcome Tanya and John to this webinar today. John wrote this book, and you can go really into it, but this book, it's called Fixing Your Feet. Not the prettiest picture on the book, but we've all been there, right? So
it's not the ugliest.
no, it's not.
Because I can share more.
That's okay. But anyway, but the book is fantastic. And it's just a great resource. And I'm really, really excited to have these guys on the webinar with us today to talk about this. And you know what, John, I'm going to start with you because I'd really like to hear how this is your third edition, is it? Seventh edition. Okay. So talk to us about the inspiration that you had to write the first version of it.
Back in 1992, I was running the Gibson Ranch 72-hour race up out of Sacramento, California. And about 12 miles into it, I had a blister between my large toe and second toe. And a lady that I knew from the 24-hour track runs I'd done took me into her RV and showed me how to duct tape that so I could continue running. And that kind of piqued my interest because I had done 100-mile runs and track runs and all that. But this was my longest event. And so I started just to investigate, how do you take care of your feet? What do you do? And compiled some stuff. And then my son said, Dad, you should write a book about feet because you know how to take care of yours. So kind of the rest is history. Self-published the first two editions in 97 and 2000. And then Wilderness Press picked it up. And we've just been going strong ever since.
Yeah, and I just was actually in REI and I saw the book on the bookshelf. This was the only book in REI. I was very surprised. So congratulations to you on getting it there. So can you talk to us a little bit? I mean, there's so much in this book. And what I guess I would like to start with is the footwear. So you have a whole section about barefoot running and maximum cushion. I mean, is there a best footwear for running?
The best footwear for running is what fits your feet and the event or what you're doing, whether it's casual running or racing or triathlete or cycling or hiking or whatever. Whatever fits your feet the best is what's best for you. There is not one perfect pair of shoes. There are many shoes that will fit your feet, but there are some that fit better than others. So that's the key. How do you find that right pair of shoes?
And so if someone is used to just a moderate cushioned shoe, is it smart for them to just go for a barefoot shoe? Or on the reverse, go to a maximum cushion shoe?
Well, I'm sure Tanya has something to say on this too, but you don't jump into it head over heels and start to do a lot of miles barefoot or even in a minimalist shoe, because you're working different muscles in your feet, in your ankles, in your legs, and your lower back even has to support everything. So work your way into it gently. Otherwise, you'll join the crowd of people who are making podiatrists happy when they make money treating your injuries because you did too much too soon.
Yes, Tanya.
Please let me chime in here. So as a physical therapist who has a long history of working with runner and being a runner myself, like John's last statement, I mean, I don't mind the increased client caseload that happens whenever there's a footwear trend that everyone is jumping into. But data definitely, I'll reinforce what John said, data supports that the shoe that's the most predictive variable of whether a shoe is the proper one for you is whether it's comfortable for you. But I understand that many newer runners don't have the confidence to know what's comfortable for themselves. And that's where having a relationship with a local running store who knows you, what you're running, your distances you're running, and the terrain that you're running on, and as well as the type of shoe that does fit you better. They're the people that you really need to have a strong relationship with, especially if you're newer to running, because there's nothing better than walking into a running store, because then they also have generous return policies where you get a shoe and you run on it, it doesn't really work and you can bring it back. So there's nothing better than walking into a store. And like when I was living in Bend, Oregon, Sean Meisner, I'd walk into Fleet Feet and be like, hey, Sean, I need a new pair of shoes. And he goes, what for? Trails or trails or street? And I'd be like, oh, I need another trail shoe. And he's like, all right, and he'd come out 3 pairs of shoes. I'd try one of them on, whichever one fit was the one that fit. But one thing also that people don't particularly pay the best attention to is all of the variables. You have to look at all the variables when you're choosing a shoe. You're not just looking at foot shape, because that actually has been proven to be the high, low, medium arch. That's actually been proven to not be a thing. You need to look at, you do need to be aware of whether your foot is mobile or stable. So if it's a flexible foot, then that foot is going to be at end range with the tissues, and you're more apt, if you're spending a lot of time on a long distance, you're going to be stressing those tissues. So you might need a little bit more support for a longer run, but if you're running shorter run, you can get away with less support. If you have a rigid foot, that foot's going to be more prone to injuries from a bone and from concussion. A flexible foot gets injured from soft tissue stress. You need to know what your weight, because a heavier runner needs to have more cushioning, because you have to think about the pressure that's going through the foot with every footstep. You need to know the terrain and the distance. And so people should have different types of shoes that they're wearing specifically for different type of things. And so in your training programs, you're not supposed to increase your training mileage by like 10% a week. That's a variable. And then if you're going to change your your training intensity, you're thinking about running up hills is intensity, the speed is intensity, and then distance is intensity. So if you're looking at your training program, you're considering those variables when you're deciding on your training program. You should also consider all of those variables with your shoe. So being loyal to one shoe and one design and wearing that one thing all the time is really kind of a failing. But anyhow, just open your mind, think of all the variables.
So let me ask you this,
My little
Tanya.
diatribe.
So how often should you buy new shoes? That's the $1 million question,
And you know what, again, like John said, there's not a hard and fast rule, because it depends on the shoe brand. It depends on how you're built. Like if you're heavy, you're going to need to replace your shoes more often. If you're running on hard surfaces, you're going to need to replace your shoes more often. So what, it's like 300 to 500 miles is the general term. But what ends up happening with your experience in running, you will be able to tell when it's time. In your body, you'll have a tell for when the shoe is breaking down and it's time for a new shoe. Like my left big toe, the base of it starts getting a little bit sore, and then I know that that's the tell. Like I've had a friend of mine who, she called her shoes Shoe 2K because she had 1,000 miles on them, and she was still fine. And she was an elite level runner. But so you again, it's individual. The general rule of thumb is at 300 to 500 miles, but you have to consider all the variables, and you'll end up figuring out what works for you. So have the confidence to know internally and with you, have the internal locus of control with your decisions with regarding the gear and your shoes and your foot care, rather than that external locus of control and doing what other people are doing, because they're not you.
Now, what about insoles? You have a whole section here in the book about insoles. Is it smart to have insoles? Is it not? Should you just go with what the standard insole is on shoes? I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Some
John?
people call them insoles, some people call them inserts. Shoe companies have done a much better job over the years in making a good insert, a good insole. Many shoe companies, though, if you buy your shoes, take the insole out, hold it up, and see how much it bends in half. A lot of them are just a layer of cardboard, and they're shaped in the heel, maybe a little cut in the arch to accommodate the shoe's arch. But they're for the most part, they're not made for the long term. So often people will buy shoes and switch to a different arch support, a different insole, or after a little bit of miles, they'll swap them out just because they realize that the shoe's providing the support and the insole is kind of just sitting there.
Yeah, it's kind of the same as what I just said is, everybody's a little different. If you feel that there's something lacking in the insole, like, maybe that's not the right shoe for you. Because you also have to consider that if you're taking out if you're putting something new in, that may change the fit of the shoe and then create a chance for blisters, etc. So just, like John said, if you feel like whatever works for you, but have a reason for why. If you feel like you need to put an arch support in, have actual reasons why. Not because Billy down the street told me to, or some chiro or some PT or somebody who recommends them to everyone. Have a specific reason based on you and your experiences that upon which you are basing that decision to change your shoe, which is basically what you're doing when you're putting in a new insert in.
Yeah.
So-
I worked at I think it was an Avon Run fundraiser for women, and it was two days long. And when everybody was registering, one of the shoe companies had a pop-up there, and they were selling shoes. And so many of these women were buying new shoes the day before the race or the run was going to start. And a lot of those people, inexperienced, without the base knowledge, go in there and they pick a shoe based on the color, or because Nancy has that same shoe, so that's why I'm going to buy the shoe. So whether it's shoes, insoles, get what works for your feet.
Is it better? This is another one of these like $1 million questions, and I know you address this in your book. Is it better to go to one of these companies and get custom orthotics as opposed to buying off the shelf?
This
Tanya.
is my purview as a physical therapist. Custom orthotics are really not generally needed. The way to find out if a custom orthotic is something that you need is to try something over the counter first. And especially if you're going to use an orthotic early on in your running career, what you may notice is that just because of the way you move and your body changes and adapts to running and you get stronger, that using an over-the-counter orthotic while you're building up your mileage and becoming your body's adjusting to running, then you'll grow out of the arch support, which is really the most common reason anyone uses an orthotic. And then, yeah, so really, you're better off spending your money on like buying the book or get yourself a second pair of shoes or a third pair of shoes. So if you, thanks for asking that. I'll just kind of segue to something a little different, but not the same, but different. That's another reason to have a variety of shoes. If you have a variety of shoes where you've got less support for shorter distances, medium support for your medium distances, I'm just ballparking, and then something that has a little bit more cush for the longer distances. If you have different types of shoes that you rotate through, that challenges your foot muscles and your leg, foot, ankle, back, all those mechanics, and help you get stronger and more robust and more less injury prone than if you make every shoe the same by putting in the same insert. So if you put an insert into every shoe, you're basically taking away the individual characteristics of that shoe and making them all the same. So it's like putting ketchup on everything. So then all food tastes like ketchup. So embrace variety in your footwear and think about that's helping you become stronger, better runner and reducing your chance for injury. So variety is good.
Interesting. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. That was awesome advice. Talk to us a little bit. I'm going to open this up to everybody, so get your questions ready. But I'd like to kind of go now into some of the issues that we all have as runners and triathletes, like Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, all these types of different foot issues. And is there anything we could do about that?
Sorry, John, that's in my purvey. So all of those injuries are repetitive stress injuries. So I will tell all of you, if you go to anyone for any running injury, no matter who it is, especially if it's a physical therapist, because they should know better. If they don't look or ask, if they don't ask about your training program, you need to find somebody, you need to fire that person and move on to somebody who will ask you about your training program, because all of those injuries, all of the running related injuries, aside from trauma, which would be like, sprained ankle, like while you're running, or torn quad or something, they're all repetitive stress injuries, which means too much, too fast. So those are the most important things to examine. So keep a log, pay attention, understand how, and so you need to have somebody who can kind of help problem solve with you, not only understand the injury itself, but a part of discovering the cause of that injury for you so that you don't continue to be re-injured, which is very common. You need to have somebody kind of get beside you, figure out the training error, because all of those injuries are because of training errors and tissue overload.
One thing I'll say here is that, and it's very much what Tanya's talking about, when somebody asks me a question and they're complaining of an injury or discomfort or something, I will often ask them, well, tell me what changed. Because something in your running, in your walking, whatever, something changed. Did you change shoes, socks, insoles, the way you tie your shoes? Are you running, maybe with a, hydration pack on your back that puts more weight on? Did you not use a lubricant on your feet on that particular day? What changed? And then start from there. And then sometimes you can even go back and say, okay, I changed from this to this. Okay, then, let's go back to that incident and go back to what you were doing.
In the book, you have a whole section on self-care. Could you just provide us with a couple of key tips?
Well, self-care can be, I'd have to open the book and look at the chapter and see exactly what I wrote. But
give us a little hint.
What was that?
Give us a little hint on where you're going with this.
Oh,
well,
sorry. I just, you have like some tips here on, and I don't have the section on how to care for your feet.
Skincare.
Pedicures.
I tell you, well-placed rest is critical.
What was that, Tanya?
Resting at the right times.
Yeah. You can learn how to give yourself a simple foot massage. Work those muscles, the tendons, stretch everything out. Your feet are like everything else. You may go get a massage after a hard training event or after doing a triathlon. Well, do they touch your feet at all? I mean, are you getting a massage on your legs and your lower back maybe, but you're totally forgetting about your feet? So there's different things. I mean, make sure that you're wearing clean socks and have some powder or something in your socks. Get a pedicure, but know the right way to get a pedicure. Don't let them just file your nails down to zip or to clean that callus off the week before you're going to do a race, because your skin will be tender there. So understand what some of your different options are.
Thank you. And now I'd like to open this up for questions.
Yeah, I have a question. So, the crowd here is not your typical, middle-aged, say weekend warrior. People here are usually doing, some heavy distance running, whether it's half marathon, marathon, or ultra marathon, or they're doing, extensive training for a triathlon, up to 10 to 12 hours a week. Are you better off going, with, say, whether it's a podiatrist or orthopedist, going to a sports specialist?
You need to go to a physical therapist.
Yeah.
A physical therapist that is, and I have a strong opinion on this because I'm educated on this. It's not just industry bias. A physical therapist who is familiar with working with runners is always your best bet, because we are trained in diagnosis and treatment, and other professions are not trained in diagnosis and treatment. So an orthopedist can diagnose, they can do invasive procedures, but they're not, because they can do invasive procedures, they're going to send you down like the medical model, where they're going to be, poking you with needles and taking imaging studies that scare you, that are unnecessary. But they're not, a good orthopedist then will refer you to a physical therapist for treatment, but we can diagnose and treat. And so, but getting somebody who is capable or who's comfortable with runners is always your best bet, because we have more broad training.
Expand on that, Tanya, and talk about a podiatrist now.
Oh, so podiatrists, now there's always the outliers, because there is a podiatrist here in the St. Pete area who does treat a lot of runners. And because he's done a lot of extra training after that's outside of the podiatry realm, he's basically taken a bunch of physical therapy courses. He is proficient at treating runners. But that's an outlier. So a podiatrist is a medical doctor trained to perform invasive procedures on the foot and ankle. So they can diagnose anything. They can diagnose issues with the bone, the soft tissue, the tendons, and their interventions then they're trained to perform invasive procedures. They are not trained during their medical doctor curriculum to assess movement or to perform rehab, because otherwise they'd be in medical school for actually another 9 years. And so just understand the limitations again. So podiatrist, for rehabbing an injury, your physical therapist is always your best option. But a podiatrist can, like an orthopedist, they can diagnose, but there's kind of no point, because, or that's just like an extra step for you to do. If you have a qualified PT who's familiar with runners, we can do both. And then a podiatrist or an orthopedist would be the person that we would refer you to if an injury needs intervention, such as something invasive. That makes sense. So a lot of folks don't realize PTs can diagnose as well as treat.
Okay, thank you.
And if you're unsure of this, if you've got a copy of Fixing Your Feet, the first chapter actually talks about seeking medical treatment. And it goes into what is a certified podorthist, what's a physical therapist, chiropractor, athletic trainer, and so forth. So
yeah. And it's always good, and crowdsource.
Yeah.
Ask other runners who they've gone to for their injuries, that they've had good results for not only diagnosis, but treatment. That's always should be your first go-to, just crowdsource.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question though. Thank you for asking.
Any other questions?
What's the best, what's the best direction to determine proper gait?
So there's no such thing as a proper gait. There's no such thing as proper posture. Your best posture is your next posture, because we're made to move and not sit in one position. So proper gait, there's more efficient running form that everyone kind of with experience, if you run long enough, you improve, your form becomes more efficient. And so when you're talking about proper running form, that is a multifactorial individual decision tree that you kind of have to dabble through and work into. So basically, if you look at some of the Olympic runners, like their form is terrible, but if you were to talk about proper form, but they're winning gold medals. So if what you're doing isn't broken, no sense in trying to fix it, but that would be where you go to somebody who is familiar with running, and is going to look at your experience, looking at how you run, and is not just trying to like sell you a pair of shoes. But yeah, proper running form. I mean, you can, yeah, that's just what I'm going to stop there.
Anybody else?
Yeah, because like Tanya says, if you go to a track and there's people running on a track, I've worked events where they're running around an oval quarter-mile track for 24 hours or even 6 days. And you look at all the people, and there's many different forms, just as there are many different shoes and all that stuff too. So work on your form. Don't try to mimic or copy somebody else.
And if anyone is trying, and I'm always careful, really nervous about people getting taken advantage of. If somebody's trying to sell you that there's a perfect running form, that's just a really good marketing tool. There is something to be said for being aware of running form and having that improve your body awareness, because everybody's form changes as they run. So if you're in a race and you're able to improve your body awareness, have that internal locus of control, that has been proven to be like, a runner needs to know their body, and they need to know it unabashedly. You need to say, okay, I know what's going on here. I need to figure it out. And unfortunately, and that's a harder path to follow than to just go with a cookie cutter black and white answer that this is the perfect thing and now I don't have to think anymore. So if you know when you're running, you tend to drift off to the left and then your left knee kind of dips in, that's going to cause injury if you've got another 20 miles to run in that race. And so your body awareness and what your form is and how it changes and how you could be more at risk as you're running something longer, especially, that can be helpful if you're looking at if you're examining your running form, is just by increasing your body awareness.
That's great.
That's a good question. Thanks, Jody.
I'd like to ask a question.
Oh. I have an answer.
But it's not for you, Tanya, I don't think.
Good.
I'm speaking that the people listening in here, and I mean, Hillary too, when you're doing a triathlon or training for one, do you incur more injuries or more stresses when you're running as opposed to cycling? And if so, let's talk about cycling for a moment. Do your feet get affected by your cycling shoes, by ill-adjusted pedals? Talk about that. Are your shoes too tight? Are they, is your heel riding up in the back? What are some of the typical problems that you guys have in your training and your events?
Steve, you want to talk or?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Steve. I can tell you with regard to triathlon specifically, I've always found that cycling shoes, generally speaking, are just too tight. I know by design, they're designed to be snug. There's a form that contributes to more pedal power. But as of yet, I've not found one that really feels comfortable over the long term. And that's one thing that I've always been a little curious about. It hasn't been the case with running, because there's plenty of options for running, but cycling shoes have been a little challenging for me. And with regard to triathlon training and feet, I can tell you that, and this, I don't know if this is unique to me, but I always notice that the more I swim, the more I tend to get injuries on my toes from pushing off the wall in indoor pools. A lot of scraping along,
Yeah.
here, and literally, little micro cuts, abrasions, which kind of painful. There's a lot of nerve endings, in your toes. And I noticed that the more you train, it just becomes more pronounced. And sometimes it carries over for a period of time into your run, because now you're putting,
Sure.
kind of aching feet into shoes, and off you go. So I wonder if you had a thought about that.
There's a taping technique that you can use to protect your toes when
Yeah.
you're swimming.
Yep.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. The taping techniques that that John has in his book, if you apply it in the way that it's described, that tape will stay on for days. And through the
Even in a
sweaty
pool.
mountain trails, in the pool, I routinely use the kinesio type tape and with swimmers. And if you apply it properly with the benzoin, the tincture of benzoin underneath, and like just doing the little tricks that John kind of invented, and then I like carry on with, you can protect your toes while you're swimming and keep, because those micro cuts, God, that just has to be painful, but that can be prevented.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir,
I actually just posted videos on the Western States 100 website. There's some basic taping techniques under the foot care tab. That just happened last week. So there's 3 videos on there, and I'll add more. So that should help you.
Great.
There's
when-
several years ago, I helped at an event in New Orleans that was about 44 triathletes doing either 5 or 10 Ironmans in a row. Then they had their choice of all the swimming, all the biking, all the running, or one per day for 5 or 10 days. And they started with open water, but it was so cold they had to switch to pools. And so nobody complained to me about sore toes, but I can see, particularly depending on the type of pool and the composition of the the liner in the pool, where you could get those little micro tears or abrasions on your toes. So check out that, Tanya, the link for that, WSR.
WSER 100. Hang on, let me just double check.
Because Tanya
That's
has
brand new. That's finally.
Tanya has a video on there that shows taping toes.
Or it's on my Facebook or my YouTube channel. So it's either WSER.org, and then you go to runners. I'm assuming runners. No. Oh yeah, go under runners and then scroll down, and there's a foot care section, or you can go to Centaur Physical Therapy on YouTube. They're the same videos.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments?
Any of you have heel problems in your biking shoes?
What happened with me last year, I was riding a long run, a ride in preparation for a half Ironman. And I got off the bike and actually tore my meniscus right when I was running. Now, the issue was, and it turned out that my bike shoes weren't in the right position and my seat wasn't proper. So I was a little bit too low. I was putting too much pressure on my knees. And
And
then
you
when
were in a hurry and you were tired and yeah,
I was exhausted.
all of
It was
those.
like a six,
needs
I don't know,
twisted
we did like
and-
60 miles or something was, and then I had to run after that. So
So sorry. How'd that go? Did you get it done?
I did not, I had to go for surgery.
Oh, fudge. No shame in that. No shame.
It's all in the book though.
that. Oh, all right. I like that plug. That was good.
I've done several cycling events. I'm a cyclist now. I don't run anymore because of health issues. Mainly back and hips and stuff like that. But I've done fundraisers, which are 24-hour bike rides. And being on a bike that longest I did the first year I did this out of 5 years, I think was 264 miles. And your feet get really tired. I mean, you've got to make sure your cleats are fit well. So when you're on your bike, your legs moving up and down, in the cycling motion are putting the weight in the right spot. And everything's well. Cycling shoes don't come with good insoles. So you might want to get a better insole that has some cushion in it too. And then obviously if you change socks, just moving to a little bit thicker sock can sometimes make the shoes even tighter and impede circulation and cause other issues there too.
I've had my cycling shoes now for at least 6 years. I mean, should you be switching these up?
What do the rest of you do?
What do you guys do? Do you guys have like cycling shoes forever? Morris is a big cycler. What do you do?
I find a good pair of shoes. My cycling shoes cost me $400. I find a good pair of shoes and I just use them until they basically wear out. Is that not good?
I think that's fantastic. I love what you just said. You find what works for you. You weren't afraid to spend a little money.
Yeah.
And you'll know when they're worn out. That's all the things. That's what being an athlete is like knowing yourself and your body and what works for you. I think that's great.
Well, and runners will often complain about how much a pair of shoes costs, but how much do cycling shoes cost?
And how much does not being able to do your run?
Someone's at the front door doorbell.
Someone's at the doorbell.
Modern technology is amazing. Hey, can I just say something real quick? Because John never will. So I'm a contributing author to Fixing Your Feet. It's a huge honor. John has become one of my really close friends and colleagues and mentors over the last, 12, 13 years. The proudest thing in that book for me is the foreword, because John will never toot his own horn. And I would really, when you guys get the book, will you please read that forward so that you can give John like the homage and the credit and that he deserves.
Well, it is a fantastic book, and thank you very much, John. And I'm just holding up the book again so that you guys see it. I think everybody should have this. Any athlete should have this in their library. It's something that you can refer back to over and over again. So I thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm honored to be able to help people too. It is interesting. I've met runners. One runner came up to me, asked me to sign his book. And at that time, I think we were in at least a 5th edition. And he hands me a 2nd edition, which is like, 10, 12 years earlier. And I mean, I signed it for him, but if you've got an old edition, 5th edition is old. Every edition has been gone through page by page, item by item, product by product. We've taken out stuff that doesn't work anymore. For instance, the whole theory of RICE, R-I-C-E for cold. Tanya can speak to that for hours. We changed that. So every issue highlights new things. The 6th edition highlighted the whole matter of shear. And the 7th edition now, we changed a lot of stuff in there. And I was shocked when I got the book and find out the new edition added like 70 pages of content. Tanya's long-winded, so
They're great. Those tips are great, Tanya.
yeah.
And I wish that we had somebody like you on Long Island. There's people from all over the country on this call, but specifically on Long Island, I wish that there was someone like you out here, because
There's video. And that's the thing that I was going to also say, is that John and I are available to help. And what we're trying to do also is to provide more online resources for people who need them. But we're just an email away. Like, I've actually done, I've been on call as a foot care expert for people during their races in Europe. I'm just like, dude,
awesome.
do you have cell phone access while you're there? Well, yeah. I'm like, well, just text, like Zoom me in, like FaceTime me in. Like with modern technology, like we can be available. So
That's awesome. That's great to know.
And because that's both of our, like John, especially, he's just has got a servant's heart. And this is like, this is a labor of love and a passion, and the intention of all of this is to help people run better and to do the things that they love and to not be hindered. And so it's just, the more we can be helpful, the better that it makes time and effort worth it. So yeah, we're also working on just having more online resources, but yeah, dude, we're an email away. Come on.
Yep.
And I'm putting in the addresses for the accessing those videos. That's the Western states in the chat.
And then in the book is a chapter on taping, so you can learn more by going there.
Yes, let me find that. Yeah. But the videos I just made are a bit more detailed.
Yeah.
Bonus points for bonus points if you see my friend drinking wine in the back. Who's the foot? She was my model. I didn't realize there was anything. Oops.
The other interesting thing that's developed over the years is the quality of socks. There have been some great inroads. I mean, some people like toe socks, some people hate them. But you got to try them once to determine if they're right for you. But if you have toe issues, try toe socks out. But just the fabrics, the water hating fabric of certain socks that wick moisture away, your feet will still be damp. You will never get away from damp or even cold skin. But there's so many good socks out there. I hope you guys never wear cotton socks. That's my, we just don't like cotton socks. Another thing that Tanya and I are sticklers on is toenail care. And if you talk about cycling shoes and how tight the fit is, when you've got a race coming up, trim your nails. The biggest thing we find in runners, one of them is improperly trimmed toenails. When you trim your toenails, trim them straight across, maybe a little curve at the two ends so you don't have a point there. And then take a file and simply run it over the nail tip, over and over and over and over and over. So when you're done and you take your finger and you run it up over the tip of that toe, you don't feel a nail or a corner, because your sock or the fit of the shoe, the front of the shoe, can force that nail back and do trauma to the nail bed, and you could get blood under the toenail or I mean, that kind of thing. So take care of your toenails. It takes so little, but so many people just don't think about it.
Yeah, that's a critical one. A bloody toenail is no good. That'll ruin a race real fast.
Absolutely. And
so does anyone have any common issues that they have? Something that keeps popping up for them?
Sounds like you all have perfect feet. We've been doing this for years, And nothing is new to us. Although every so often we get somebody who's running a race. We've had runners come into a 56-mile aid station in Western States with severe athlete's foot between their toes. I mean, just sickening. And he worked at a running store, which is, even more surprising. We've had runners, after we've worked on their feet, taped their feet up. I ask them if they have, clean socks to put on their feet, and they hand us a pair of socks, and we unroll the socks and there's holes in the sock. And, you're spending money on a race, whether you're doing an Ironman or a half or something shorter, you're spending money, from your entry fees, your bike's expensive, your shoes, your gear, all that stuff. Spend a little bit more and learn how to take care of your feet, because that's what's going to get you across the finish line.
So do you have a favorite pair or favorite brand of socks?
Oh, I like a lot of different socks because I have some toe socks. I have a sock called Exoskin. They make excellent socks, and they actually make toe socks in addition to the Injinji toe socks. There's some great socks out there. I would not imagine that you guys are really wearing compression socks. Maybe you might change during or right before the run or something, but we've had issues with compression socks where we can't get them off the runner's feet and actually have to cut them off.
That's what trauma shears are for.
Yeah, so that's an expensive pair of
And
socks.
don't come in, don't put holy socks in your drop bag, for cripe's sake, people. That's gonna make my head explode. You spend all this money. I give away probably half a dozen of my own socks every year at Western States, or I beg and borrow from people around. So do others a kindness. Here's just a public service announcement. When you're in your drop bags, put more than one pair of socks in there, have them be a little bit different, because what that can do for you is can give you an option, because you may need a different thickness of sock when you in mid-race that you didn't expect, but you also may need to donate one to a fellow runner who just wasn't maybe thinking when they packed their bags. And that you could help somebody. We're all in this to get to the finish line, right? Nothing wrong with helping out. But I've been there, who's got a pair of socks for this runner? And it's just somebody always comes running over if I'm out of my own socks. But I think, we're all in this, help each other out. But you're never like, oh, I wish I had fewer socks to choose from. And it's not like they take up a bunch of space, right?
The way that Tanya
and variety.
The way that Tanya and I operate at a race is, our goal is to patch people so they can get back out on the course. I can probably count on 4 fingers the number of people I've told that they should not continue on. It's very slim. And over 25 years, I've worked on thousands and thousands of feet, but you got to have a sense of humor too. And Tanya and I do. We have our toenail talk when we find a runner with bad toenails, and so we give them the toenail talk or the sock talk. And you got to have fun when you're staring down all these dirty, stinky feet, but our purpose is to get these runners to the finish line.
Who's giving the talk?
Yeah.
Or I look over and John's head is just red because he's like apoplectic at with the situation that he's got in front of him. Like, you paid $800 for a plane ticket. You paid for the run. How many years did it get you to get it? And you give me a pair of socks with a hole in the toe? $12. It's just, oh my God. Can I tell a story about
Go for it.
I would tell the Russian story because we get it mile 55 at Michigan Bluff in Western States 100. The runners have come through the canyons. It's hot and sweaty. This 250-pound dude rolls in. He's got a really heavy Russian accent. His wife is like 5'1", tiny little woman. He lays down. He sits down in the chair. It's like the zero gravity chair. He reclines back, and we're trying to be as efficient as possible. He goes, "Oh, my feet!" I can't do the accent, but I'll be terrible. "Oh, the balls of my feet! I got big blisters blisters, and that to me, I know they're macerated. So, and I'm like, okay, get him some food. So his wife, talking to his wife brings him a burger and a Coke, and he's eating his burger and his Coke. I take his shoes off, macerated AF. And there's some skin tears. And so the bottom layer, the skin on his bottom of his foot is actually delaminating and sloughing off of his foot. We can fix that. So I piece everything together. I put the tape on. I basically reconstruct the bottom of his foot. And he's like, la, 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 ha, ha, telling jokes to the other volunteers. And he's just having a great day. Send him on his way. He finishes the race. He comes into the finish line and he's like, why can you take the tape off now? You know, and I'm looking at it and I look at him and I look at his wife and I say, so, and I remember the extent of the injury. I'm like, so where are you staying? He goes, oh, we're staying in a hotel for the next 2 nights. And then we're flying back to Russia, you know, and I'm like, okay, you cannot take your shoes off until at least tomorrow or until you get into the hotel, because your wife cannot carry you. You have to keep your shoes on until you get into your hotel. And then when you take your shoes off, you're not going to be able to get them back on. So you have to have a pair of slide sandals. And I'm looking at his wife because I'm just thinking, oh my God, this man is going to get into his hotel room. His feet are going to be so painful he can't walk. And his tiny little wife is not going to be able to help him. And he's going to have to crawl to the airport. They sent me a follow-up email. It was totally fine.
That's great. That's a great question. That's a really great
Yeah.
story. So, you know, just to wrap this up, can you both offer your contact information, either, you know, in the chat or on right now?
Sure.
I'm typing it in right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mine's very simple. John at Fixing Your Feet. Tanya, I've never done that. How do you
I
do
got
that?
this. I got you.
Okay.
I got you. Don't you worry.
Yeah. And I answer emails all the time, and I don't, you know, I take the time and explain to people what's going on. We often go back and forth, multiple emails to figure out what actually is going on.
And photos really help. Photos and videos are really helpful. So if you have something that you're inquiring about, it can be a little more efficient if you just show us an image of whatever it is, because then we can kind of, there'll be fewer back and forth, because that's the first thing we're going to ask about. Like, show me what you're talking about. show me your issue. Show me what you got. But yeah, definitely look at the videos. I think they'll be helpful for you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for your time. This was fantastic, really fantastic. A
Yeah, it
great
was really good.
learning experience.
Who's got races coming up
We all do.
Everybody.
soon? Let me know if you need it. Let me know if you need the on-call foot care person.
Well,
Or if you have any questions prior to that, my
Yes.
neighbor down the street's doing the Chattanooga Ironman. Either this weekend or next, I'm not sure. So,
It's coming right up.
yeah.
well, if I can ask, since you got you here, if I can just pick your brain real quick. I'm doing a half marathon on Saturday. And just in the last 2 days, I've noticed that, you know, the beginnings of what appear to be plantar warts popping up on the ball of one foot. Not painful, I'm able to run, but you know when there's just something that's just kind of starting to nag you a little bit. So it's been on my mind, and then when Hillary offered that the Zoom was coming up, I was thinking, oh, this could be interesting. Now, the short answer is I'm gonna run, and that's the end of it. But, you know, I wondered if you had any thoughts about anything I could do to prepare to try and minimize what might be painful day.
Are they causing you injury, causing you pain?
No,
Okay, so you might want to tape over them. Where are they? On the ball of the foot or the heel?
right on the ball.
Okay, so just look at my ball of the foot taping video, and you'll want to, if you're going to pre-tape before a race, do it the night before, so that you can give a chance, so you can take the time and do it properly, because it's really important that you do it properly, especially with the preparing the skin, so that the adhesive will stay on. And then you'll do it the night before, and then everything will be set up and ready to roll for you in the morning. So if you throw just a piece of tape over there, with the tincture of benzoin to make sure that the tape stays on. That'll provide some protection for those plantar warts so that they won't become problematic for you. And if they start being painful during the race, how long is the race?
Half marathon,
Okay, okay, so you'll be fine. Yeah.
I think.
And then just get them zapped when you get home.
That's the plan. Not before,
With the-
certainly.
Just
Not
freeze
before,
thaw, yeah.
no.
Cool,
You
thank
know,
you.
If they start to swell up or get thicker, you could even take some adhesive felt or just a thin moleskin or even several layers of tape, make a little donut, put that over the
Mhm.
plantar wart and then put some tape over the top of it to hold that down, just to give that wart some space.
Yeah, that can actually take up space though. So
Yeah.
don't try
You can-
that. Yeah, just try the basic tape to start off with. Less is more unless, and then just get them, frozen.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Certainly.
We enjoy this. This was fun. I don't do triathlons because I'm a sinker. I discovered that many years ago. So put me in a pool and yeah, isn't any good. Isn't fun.
Well, I thank you both very much on
Thank you,
behalf of the
Hillary.
group, and I'll be sending this around to the rest of the group. And again, I told you I put this on my blog as well, so there'll be a resource for everybody. Thank you, and I will definitely be in touch with both of you because this was
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Sure.
seriously, yeah, we just want to
Happily.
help. And
Thank you.
ideally, by helping you all learn how to tape properly, then you'll teach people and then they'll teach people. So there'll be fewer people having blister or foot care issues that cause them to have poorer race, drop out of races or have a less good race experience. That's our real mission, is to just educate everyone.
Yeah.
So thanks for helping us do that.
Thank you. And the book is available, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, REI, I guess
Western
anywhere.
States 100, I'll be there with a few.
It's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
both
all.
Very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you all
much.
for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.